can you elaborate on this story and give us some extra detail on what's happening here?
Sure. So just to back up for some context, we learned over the weekend that the FBI was going to be vetting the tens of thousands of National Guard members who were coming to Washington to help out with security for the inauguration. And part of the concern, part of the reason for that was this notion of a potential insider attack, by which I mean that a member of the National Guard could potentially act out through violence. We have since learned that as a result of that vetting process, two members of the National Guard have been removed from the inauguration security process because of potential ties to right-wing extremists.
Right, so it is out of an abundance of caution. Is this what they're saying, or they believe that there could well have been a legitimate threat?
This is out of an abundance of caution. And what's interesting is this is a threat that over the last decade or so, or at least since the September 11th attacks, has been more commonly associated with Islamic extremism as in terms of the notion of an insider attack. But here what we're seeing is a concern that you could actually have an American domestic-based attack. Again, I should note that there is no intelligence, according to our sources, indicating that that is likely or necessarily a realistic prospect. But as you said, it is an abundance of caution.
Sure. And so because there is an abundance of caution and because that claim had been made that there may well have been an insider attack, now that these two members of the National Guard have been taken out, has that threat been eased? Do they still believe that there could well be the possibility of that happening?
I think there's no way to eliminate that prospect. And I should note that it's one of many different security concerns that alarm United States officials. They are working in a way to protect the inauguration in a way that has not been done in modern American history. So it's hard to say for certainty that you could alleviate that threat. But I do think they view that as a step towards progress.
Eric, you're there at the moment. You're in DC. You're seeing this firsthand. Can you describe the security system, the processes that are in place at the moment? You've basically got the Capitol building and the White House that is essentially hermetically sealed at the moment.
It is like nothing that I have experienced in my years in Washington. Even with press credentials, there is not much ability, if any, to really move around. This inauguration was already going to be small and crowd-sized by virtue of the pandemic, and that's something that, in fact, the transition team of President-elect Joe Biden had wanted. But the ability by any person in Washington to maneuver around is really limited at the moment. But I should note that this relates to a very specific section of the city. So it's not as if the entire city of Washington, D.C. is somehow under a lockdown. This really relates to a specific subsection of the city, but it's a part of the city that is home to our seat of government.
Have you still got a lot of those shops that are boarded up? We saw a lot of that during around the election time. I was there and saw a lot of that, and it took a long time for some of that to have taken down. But is there still concerns from a business point of view that there could be some protests, even some rioting on the streets outside, away from the Capitol building, away from the White House?
There are those concerns, and you do still see stores boarded up. The interesting thing about the way the city is structured is that around the Capitol specific, just specifically around that building is not such a retail destination. You actually have to walk a little bit to get there, so it's not as if there are stores directly outside. But yes, you are seeing retail and shops take their own security precautions for sure.
Yeah.